the soldier who chose silence. When Emma found the metal box under her father's bed, he had been dead for 3 years. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just organizing the house before putting it up for sale. The box was rusted along the edges, locked with an old padlock she had to pry open with a screwdriver. Inside, there were photographs, dozens of them. Young men in dirty uniforms, tired smiles, faces that looked far too old for such thin bodies. And in the middle of it all, a letter, unsigned, undated, just a few lines written by hand, in shaky handwriting. Emma sat down on the floor of that empty bedroom and realized that for 38 years she had lived with a man she thought she knew. But that letter, those words, revealed something else. Something he had carried alone his entire life. As you listen to this story, comment where you're watching from, what city or state. I like knowing how far these stories travel. Emma's father, Daniel Carter, returned from the Vietnam War in 1972. He never talked about what he had lived through. He never watched war movies, never went to veterans meetings. When someone asked, he would just smile and change the subject. The family learned not to insist. Over time, it became just another one of his traits, like the way he drank his coffee black or how he always woke up before sunrise. But now, holding that letter, Emma realized that his silence wasn't just discretion, it was protection. And she needed to find out who or what he had been trying to protect. Daniel Carter was 21 years old when he was sent to Vietnam. He came from a small town called Millbrook in rural Ohio, one of those places where everyone knows everyone, and the only news that matters is who's getting married and who just had a baby. He grew up helping his father in the mechanic shop, playing baseball on weekends, and dating a girl named Ruth, who worked at the school library. When he received his draft notice in 1970, Ruth cried for 3 straight days. They got married a week before he shipped out. The ceremony was simple, at the Methodist church downtown, with only their 2 families present. Ruth wore her mother's dress. Daniel wore the only suit he owned. He promised he would come back. She made him swear it. And he did come back. But not the same. When Daniel stepped off the bus at the Millbrook station in March of 1972, Ruth was waiting in a blue dress, wearing a nervous smile. She had rehearsed what she would say, planned to hug him tightly, tell him she was proud, that she had missed him. But when he appeared in the bus doorway, too thin, hollow-eyed, a duffel slung over his shoulder, all the words vanished. She ran to him. He hugged her back. But something was wrong. She could feel it. It was like hugging someone who was physically there, but absent in every other way. In the car on the way home, she tried to talk. "How was the trip? Are you hungry?" "I'm fine," he answered, staring out the window. "Your dad fixed up the room, put on new sheets. He's anxious to see you." Daniel just nodded. Ruth tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She knew he had been through hard things. Everyone knew that. But she hoped that by coming home, by coming back to her, some part of the boy who had left would still be there. That night, lying in the bed they now officially shared for the first time, Ruth waited for him to speak. But he just lay on his side, staring at the ceiling, until he fell asleep. She didn't know it yet, but that would be the pattern for the next 47 years. Daniel got a job at his father's shop. He woke up at 5 every morning, drank his coffee in silence, worked all day with grease-stained hands, came home, ate dinner, watched TV without really watching, and went to bed. He was polite, kind, present, but distant. Ruth got pregnant 6 months after he returned. When she told him, he smiled, a small but genuine smile, and kissed her forehead. "You'll be a good mother," he said. She wanted him to say he would be a good father, but he didn't. Emma was born in April of 1973 on a rainy spring morning. Daniel held his daughter in his arms at the hospital, and for the first time since he'd returned, Ruth saw tears in his eyes. But he didn't cry. He just stood there, staring at that tiny child, as if trying to memorize every detail. "She looks like you," Ruth said, smiling. Daniel shook his head slowly. I hope not. Ruth didn't understand what he meant, and she didn't ask. Emma grew up thinking her father was just that way, quiet, reserved, distant. He was never cruel, never yelled, never hit. But he was never fully present either. She remembered specific moments, like the time she was 7 and he taught her how to ride a bike. He held the handlebars, ran alongside her, shouted encouragement. But when she finally managed to pedal on her own and turned to see his face, he was staring somewhere far away, as if he'd forgotten where he was, or when she was 12 and won the school spelling bee. He was in the audience, he clapped, he smiled. But when she ran up to him afterward, excited, he just patted her head and said, "Good job, sweetheart." And that was it. Emma learned not to expect more. She thought maybe that was just how fathers were. She heard her friends complain about their parents, too demanding, too controlling, asking too many questions. Emma never had that problem. Her father simply existed, like a quiet shadow in the house. Her mother, Ruth, made up for it. She was lively, talkative, present. She went to softball games, helped with homework, threw elaborate birthday parties. But Emma noticed sometimes the way her mother looked at her father, as if she were waiting for him to say something, anything. He never did. When Emma was 16, the school assigned a project about war veterans. Students had to interview a family member who had served and write an essay. Emma was excited. Finally, she had an excuse to make her father talk. She prepared questions, grabbed a notebook, and sat at the kitchen table with him one Saturday afternoon. "Dad, I need to do an interview for school about the war. Can you tell me a little?" Daniel was drinking coffee. He froze with the cup midair, looked at her for a long moment, then set it down. "I don't have much to say, Emma. Just a few things, like, where were you? What did you do?" He stayed silent, so silent she could hear the wall clock ticking. "I was a helicopter mechanic," he finally said. "Fixed what broke, that's all." "And what was it like there? The place? The people?" He stood up. "Ask someone else, sweetheart. There are plenty of veterans in town." And he left the kitchen. Emma sat there alone, staring at the empty notebook. She didn't understand why it hurt so much, but it did. Ruth came in shortly after and saw her wiping her eyes. "He didn't want to talk?" Emma shook her head. Ruth sighed and sat beside her. "Your father went through hard things over there, Emma. He doesn't like to remember. But I just wanted to know something. Anything." "I know. I did too." Emma looked at her mother. "He never told you anything?" Ruth smiled, but it was a sad smile. "No, never." Emma did the interview with Mr. Patterson, a World War II veteran who lived 2 streets down. He talked for 2 straight hours, animated, telling vivid stories. Emma wrote everything down and got a perfect grade. But deep down, she felt like she had failed at something. She never asked her father about the war again, and he never brought it up. The years passed. Emma went to college, graduated in journalism, got a job at a newspaper in Columbus. She visited her parents once a month, sometimes twice. The visits were always the same. Her mother asked about work, relationships, plans. Her father sat in his armchair, listening, nodding occasionally, smiling when appropriate. He never asked questions, but he never seemed uninterested either. It was as if he were present, but hidden behind an invisible pane of glass. When Emma was 29, Ruth was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came too late. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lived 7. Emma returned to Millbrook to help care for her. She stayed at her parents' house, slept in her old bedroom, spent her days at the hospital, and her nights in the living room watching TV with her father. He didn't talk much, but he was always there. He drove Ruth to chemo, held her hand when she vomited, read to her before bed. Emma could see that, in his own way, he loved her mother deeply, but he never said it out loud. In Ruth's final week, she was at home under palliative care. Emma and Daniel took turns sitting by her bed. One night, Emma woke up thirsty and went downstairs. As she passed her parents' bedroom, she saw the door ajar and heard her father's voice. He was talking. Emma froze. She had never heard him talk that much. I'm sorry for everything, Ruth. I'm sorry I never managed to be what you deserved. You were always too good for me. Ruth was asleep. She heard nothing, but he kept going. I tried. I swear I tried to be better. But some things stick to you, you know? Things you can't wash off. Emma felt her throat tighten. She wanted to go in, hug him, tell him he had been enough. But she couldn't move. Daniel fell silent for a moment. Then he whispered, I hope you understand why I never talked. I hope you know it was out of love. Emma didn't understand what he meant, and when she finally entered the room minutes later, he was sitting in silence, holding Ruth's hand, staring at the wall. She never asked about it. Ruth died on an October morning. Daniel organized the funeral, greeted people, thanked them for their condolences. He didn't cry during the service. He just stood beside the coffin, hands folded in front of him. After everyone left, Emma stayed with him in the empty house. You'll be okay, Dad? He nodded. I always am. Emma didn't know if that was true, but she had to return to work, to her apartment, to her life. So she hugged her father, promised to call every day, and left. And she did call, every day. Sometimes he answered, sometimes he didn't. When he did, the conversations were always short. How are you? Fine. Did you eat? I did. Do you need anything? No. She visited once a month. The house was always clean. He was always well-dressed, shaved, functional, but empty. 3 years after Ruth's death, Emma got a call from her father's neighbor. Emma, I haven't seen your dad in 3 days. The lights are on, but he doesn't answer the door. Emma drove to Millbrook faster than she should have. When she arrived, the house was just as the neighbor described. Lights on, curtains closed, no movement. She used the spare key to get in. Dad? Silence. She went upstairs, heart pounding. He was lying on the bed, eyes closed, hands folded over his chest. For a terrible moment, Emma thought he was dead. Then she saw his chest rise slowly and realized he was just sleeping at 3 in the afternoon. She approached and touched his shoulder. Dad? He opened his eyes slowly, looked at her as if trying to remember who she was, then blinked. Emma. What happened? Are you sick? Just tired. Mrs. Miller hasn't seen you for 3 days. He was quiet. I was resting. Emma sat on the edge of the bed. Dad, I think you need to see a doctor. He shook his head. I don't need a doctor. Then what do you need? He looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time in her life, Emma saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. I just want this to be over, he said softly. Emma's stomach dropped. What do you want to be over, Dad? He didn't answer. He just turned onto his side, back to her, and closed his eyes again. She stayed there for over an hour. He said nothing more. Emma convinced him to get medical tests. The doctors said he was physically healthy for his age, but recommended therapy. Daniel refused. Emma tried to insist. He was firm. I don't need that. Dad, you're clearly suffering. Everyone suffers, Emma. There's no need to talk about it. She couldn't argue with that. So she did what she could, visited more, called more, tried to be present, but she felt like she was trying to hold water in her hands. No matter how hard she tried, he kept slipping away. 6 months later, Daniel had a stroke. It was mild, but enough to leave his left side weak. He needed physical therapy, help dressing, help bathing. Emma took leave from work and returned to Millbrook to care for him. He hated needing help. She could see it in his eyes, the frustration, the shame. But he didn't complain. He just accepted it, silently, as he always had. During the months of recovery, Emma slept in the next room. Some nights she heard him wake up and walk around the house. She would go downstairs and find him sitting in the living room armchair, staring out the window into the darkness. Can't sleep? Not really. Want to talk? About what? She didn't know, so she just sat with him in silence until he eventually went back to bed. One night, Emma woke up to a noise. She went downstairs and found her father in the kitchen, holding an old photograph. It showed him, young, in uniform, beside another soldier. Both were smiling. "Who is he?" Emma asked. Daniel stared at the photo for a long time. "A friend." "From the war?" He nodded. "What was his name?" Daniel was quiet. Then he whispered, "Michael." "Were you close?" He set the photo on the table. "We were." Emma waited for him to say more. He didn't. He just left the kitchen, leaving the photo behind. Emma picked it up and looked at the two men. They looked happy, or at least they looked like they were trying to look happy. She turned the photo over. On the back, handwritten, "Me and Mike, Saigon, 1971. It was the first time Emma had ever seen her father mention someone specific from the war, and she knew it meant something. But what? Daniel lived 3 more years after the stroke. He never fully recovered movement on his left side, but he learned to live with it. Emma returned to work but visited every weekend. They developed a routine. She arrived Friday night, cooked dinner, they watched TV together. Saturday morning she took him to physical therapy, then they had lunch out. Sunday she left after breakfast. They rarely talked about important things, but they were together. And for Emma, that had to be enough. One Friday in December, Emma arrived at her father's house and found him sitting in his armchair, a blanket over his legs, staring at the Christmas tree she had set up the previous weekend. "Hi, Dad." He looked at her and smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Hi, sweetheart." She cooked dinner. They ate in silence. Then they watched an old movie on TV. Emma fell asleep on the couch. When she woke up, it was already late at night. The TV was off. I was on the other side, holding the door. I saw Mike lose his balance. He was still holding the wounded soldier. I could have reached out. I could have grabbed him. But if I had, I would have let go of the door. And if I let go of the door, I would have fallen too. So I did nothing. I looked into his eyes. He looked into mine. And he understood. He knew I wasn't going to help. And he didn't blame me. He just smiled. That stupid smile of his, and said, "It's okay, Danny. Take care of Ruth for me." And then he fell. Him and the soldier he was trying to save. I don't know which one died first. I only know that I'm alive because I let my best friend die, and I will never be able to tell this to anyone, because if I do, they'll know what kind of man I am, and Ruth will know, and she won't look at me the same way anymore. So I'll keep this, forever. This is my cross, and mine alone. Emma stopped reading. She sat there on the floor, the diary trembling in her hands. She finally understood. Her father's silence wasn't indifference, it was protection. He never spoke because he believed that if he did, he would destroy the image people had of him, that Ruth had, that Emma had. He chose to carry that guilt alone his entire life, rather than share the burden and risk losing the love of the people he loved most. And Emma realized something devastating. He never understood that they already loved him. Despite everything, despite the silence, despite the distance, he didn't need to be perfect to be loved, but he never believed that. Emma kept searching through the box. At the bottom, beneath the photos, she found an envelope. It was sealed, addressed to Michael's family, Boston, Massachusetts. But it had never been sent. Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. "Dear Michael's family, I don't know if you'll want to read this. I don't know if I have the right to write, but I need to try. My name is Daniel Carter. I served with Mike in Vietnam. We were friends, good friends. I want you to know that he was the best man I ever knew. He was brave, funny, kind. He talked about you all the time, his mother, his younger brother, the girlfriend he had back home. He died trying to save someone. That's all you need to know. I was there when it happened. I saw it. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry I came back and he didn't. I'm sorry I'm writing this and don't have the courage to send it. Because if I send it, you'll want details. And I can't give those details without admitting that I failed him. So I'll keep this letter. And I'll try to live in a way that honors his memory. I'll try to be good. I'll try to be kind, even if I don't deserve it. Respectfully, Daniel Carter. Emma folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. She looked around the empty room. The room where her father had slept alone for 3 years, where he had died alone. And she realized he had never been alone. He had always carried Michael with him. Emma stayed in Millbrook for another week, finishing the house. She donated most of the things, furniture, clothes, tools, but she kept the metal box. She also kept the diary and the letter. Before returning to Columbus, she did one last thing. She searched for Michael's family. It took time, phone calls, online searches. But eventually, she found his younger brother, now a 60-year-old man named Robert, living in Boston. Emma called him. "Hello? Hi, my name is Emma Carter. My father served with your brother Michael in Vietnam." There was a pause. "Michael. It's been a long time. No one said that name in years." "I know, and I'm sorry to bother you, but I found some things that belong to my father, and I thought you might want to know." "Know what?" Emma took a deep breath. "That my father never stopped thinking about your brother, that he carried his memory his whole life, and that he wanted you to know Michael died being exactly who he always was. Brave. Good." There was a long silence on the other end. "Your father knew Mike?" "They were best friends. And he never contacted us." "No, he couldn't." "Why not?" Emma thought about lying, about sparing the truth. But then she remembered her father, the weight he had carried alone, and she decided that weight didn't have to continue. Because he thought he didn't deserve to. Because he blamed himself. Because he believed speaking would cause more harm than good. He blamed himself for what? Emma told the story. Not every detail, but enough. When she finished, Robert was silent for a long time. Then he said, "He wasn't to blame at all. I know. My brother would have understood. Mike always put others first, always. If he had a chance to save someone, he would, no matter the cost. My father knew that, but he never forgave himself. I wish he had reached out. We would have told him the same thing. I know, but he couldn't. The silence was his way of protecting you and us." Robert sighed. "That's a sad kind of love, isn't it?" Emma felt tears fall. "It is." Emma never sold her father's house. She rented it to a young family with 2 children. She visited Millbrook twice a year. In the house, she kept one room locked, the room where her father had slept. She wasn't sure why, but it felt important to preserve it. She kept in touch with Robert. They exchanged emails now and then. He sent photos of Michael as a young man. Emma sent photos of her father. They shared memories of 2 men who never managed to share their own. Emma never married, never had children. Sometimes she wondered if she had inherited something from her father, that inability to fully let someone in. But she tried. She had friends, relationships, connections. She tried not to carry things alone. One spring afternoon, 10 years after her father's death, Emma returned to Millbrook and went to the cemetery. She visited his grave every year on the anniversary of his death. She knelt in the grass and placed fresh flowers in the vase. "Hi, Dad." The wind moved softly through the trees. "I still think about you, every day, and I'm still sad about what you carried alone." She touched the headstone. "But I understand now. I understand why you never spoke. You thought you were protecting us. You thought silence was love." She wiped her eyes. "And maybe it was, in your way." She stayed there a few more minutes. Then she stood. Before leaving, she whispered, "You didn't need to be perfect to be loved, Dad. You just needed to be you." And for the first time in 10 years, Emma felt a strange peace, not complete. It never would be. But enough. Because she had learned something her father never did. That speaking doesn't destroy. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That real love doesn't require perfection. And that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't carrying the weight alone. It's letting someone help you carry it. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to this story. It's about a man who chose silence because he believed it was the only way to protect those he loved. But it's also about a daughter who, in discovering the truth, learned that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. If this story touched you in any way, leave a comment and share how it made you feel. And if you know someone who carries things alone, share this with them. Sometimes, all we need is to know we're not alone. Until the next story.